And we go now to Andrea Picciotti-Bayer, EWTN News Legal Analyst. Andrea, I'll get right to it. The 303 case, let's talk about that first, the creative case. So when your phone or computer screen lit up this morning and you saw that result, the ruling, your first reaction, please.
First, Owen, thank you so much for inviting me on. It's always a great joy to be with you and with your viewers. I had been kind of reading a little bit into things to suspect that this was going to be a victory for Lori Smith. And it's a clear victory for our Constitution, especially the First Amendment's guarantee of free speech. And that's something that's really important to understand, regardless of where your position is on the issue of same-sex marriage, that free speech is a bedrock principle of our government, of our Constitution, and the Supreme Court vindicated the free speech rights of Ms. Smith and other Coloradans.
What do you think this means for religious freedom and free speech overall?
I think it really does give a reminder to governments that government is not allowed to compel speech of Americans. Oftentimes, the progressive movement is to push forward ideological conformity, that everyone needs to think one way. Well, that's not the American way. And this decision, even though it's cabined in the context of Colorado's law and same-sex marriage, is a really important indicator as we move forward on issues related to gender ideology and other things that people of goodwill, Christians with traditional beliefs, just simply disagree with.
Let me read you something, Andrea, from the opinion. Very interesting, I thought this was. Equally, quote, equally, the government could force a male website designer married to another man to design websites for an organization that advocates against same-sex marriage. I thought that was very interesting.
You're right, Owen, and that's the idea behind free speech is, and you're absolutely right, the idea behind free speech is to protect all opinions, even those that are out of favor at a moment. Oftentimes we think that it's favoring one side or the other, but this decision really is going to favor all Americans in their individual right to believe, to act, and to speak consistent with those beliefs.
And I want to read one more sentence from that opinion. Quote, countless other creative professionals, too, could be forced to choose between remaining silent, producing speech that violates their beliefs, or speaking their minds and incurring sanctions for doing so. That's scary stuff.
It absolutely is. And at the same time, the Supreme Court did talk about the importance of public accommodation laws to vindicate the civil rights of Americans. So this isn't the Supreme Court backing away from our incredible advances, especially in addressing racial discrimination, but saying that these public accommodation laws can never be at the expense of other constitutional rights.
President Biden wrote in his statement, in America, no person should face discrimination simply because of who they are or who they love. The Supreme Court's disappointing decision, talking about this case, 303 Creative, undermines that basic truth, and painfully it comes during Pride Month when millions of Americans across the country join together to celebrate the contributions, resilience, and strength of the LGBTQ plus community. Your response to that statement?
With all due respect to the president, Owen, I think he just gets this case wrong. Lori Smith does not discriminate against people based on sexual orientation. She's said openly that she's happy to make websites for homosexuals, for gays, for lesbians. But what she doesn't want to do is use her creative talents to celebrate and endorse marriage that's against traditional marriage between a man and a woman. So I think that it's easy to spin the facts of this case, and we saw that with the dissenting justices in ways that just aren't true. But the Supreme Court's majority, especially this opinion written by Justice Neil Gorsuch, really did say authentically, this is about free speech and the limits on the government from compelling people to speak against their beliefs.
Let's switch gears, Andrea, talk about the student debt. The president wanted to forgive debts for millions across the country. It would have cost something like $400 billion, I think, either 10 or 20 grand. A lot of students would have gotten, former students. Were you surprised by that ruling?
I've got to say, as the mother to several college and recent graduates from college, the idea of getting a little relief from their loan debt is something that I was definitely interested in. But the Supreme Court mentioned that this was an overreach by the Biden administration. And I think it's important for all Americans. to kind of step back from our own self-interest and look at the importance of respect for the three branches of government. Here, the judiciary is coming in to check the executive, to check the Biden administration that overstepped its authority and usurped the spending powers of Congress. If Congress wants to pursue this kind of package, it should, but it can't do so surreptitiously through the executive.
Quite a whirlwind finally here, quite a whirlwind the last couple of days, the affirmative action thing yesterday, today the student debt, and of course the 303 creative case. Anything on your radar that we should all know about as Catholics watching from at home or here in the newsroom that we should really focus on in the coming months for the court?
I think, Owen, we're going to be seeing cases that continue to test the boundaries of religious freedom and of free speech. We're going to see issues related to what the court has identified as the ministerial exception, the ability of churches and church-run organizations to hire and fire people that are considered ministers for their church. Those issues are percolating up in the lower courts. Those issues are key to that important relationship between the church and society, and they're very important when it comes to the ability of church organizations to serve as that social safety net, especially for the needy and the vulnerable amongst us.
It's so critical to pay attention to because it slips away just like that. You can see it, right? Some people want to tear it away. I'll leave it at that. But Andrea Picciotti-Bayer, thank you so much. As always, good to see you, and we'll check in with you later, okay?
Thanks, Owen.
All right.